Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the World Explorer podcast. This is the podcast where every week we take a random prompt and build an entire world around it. My name is Casey, and I'm joined with Isaac.
Hello, world! So, today's prompt is inspired by the Lego Movie 2, because I was watching the movie recently, and in the movie, there is a character named Queen Whatever I Wanna Be. And it's a fantastic movie. If you haven't seen it, you should go watch it. But go watch the first one first if you haven't seen it. Anyway, this character is made of Lego bricks. Like just a pile of bricks, essentially, that can morph and change into any sort of form that she wants. And that was already an interesting concept to me. But that sort of thing's already been done with creatures like mimics and shapeshifters. Mm-hmm. But there is an ability that Queen Whatever I Wanna Be has that is so different. Like, just a slightly different thing from all these other creatures. And that is that she can morph with the environment around her. So one of the things she does is she just sort of like dives into the floor and becomes the building around her. And I'm sitting there like, wow, that is actually an incredibly powerful ability. And my mind just started going to, how would this sort of ability be used in like other fantasy worlds? What kind of creature could do this? How could this be used in instances like, say, warfare? Or construction, or just life building and farming? Like, what kind of utility does like this insane ability have? And so that's what we're world building today. We were world building this creature and ability, whatever it may be. I want to just see this specific ability in more world building, because I'm sitting there like, this is insane.
As long as we don't go to the extremes that they can just morph into the entire planet.
I thought about that. We're definitely saying there is a limit on this. Maybe the size of a building.
Okay, well, buildings have a very large range of sizes.
Maybe it's, I don't know, is as far as the eye can see too big? Because you can see for miles.
That is... depending. Like, you can see a candle in the pitch dark room from like 12 football fields away. So, maybe don't do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what the range is on something like this. Okay, maybe we should start off by figuring out what these creatures are. What do they look like? Do they not look like anything? Can they just morph into anything, kind of like a mimic?
Are they like a wind spirit that gets absorbed into the walls? And do they have eyes? Or is their ability... How do they see? I think I'm trying to like visualize them. Do they have eyes and like they can only see from one point, and that's kind of part of the thing that limits how big they can grow? Because if they can't really see all of themselves, then they might be less likely to morph into something very large.
Well, maybe the way it works is whatever they morph into, it essentially forms a nerve system. So, for example, if you were to try and morph into the world, you would feel the pain of anyone drilling into you somewhere, or mining, or construction, cutting down trees, like whatever, all that stuff going on, you would feel that pain, and so they would never morph into the world.
Would it be enough to kill them if they tried? Like, the pain would overwhelm them to the point where they just cease to exist?
Maybe. How would you kill a creature like this?
Convincing them to morph into the world?
I guess. If this is something... If we go with, like, say, the wind spirit, like, idea, maybe you have to somehow damage the spirit itself. Like, maybe the spirit... is located within one part of whatever it is they're possessing or morphing into. And if you were to attack, like, say, that part, it could essentially be like hitting the head of a zombie. Then then it's dead. And so,
Or if we go back to like the nervous system idea, then that you cause enough pain to cause it to like be forced out of whatever it's morphed into, and then you could kill it.
yeah, I mean that's definitely another option. Because if it's morphed into a big object and you're constantly dealing damage to it, it wants to get out of there, and you can just drive it out and then kill it.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Which means that there's got to be some visibility to this thing still. Like, even when it's inside the object or outside. Like, again, are there just two little, or one, or however many eyes we want to give it? Are there just a few little eyes that peek out, and that's what you're aiming for, as you're looking for the spirit's eyes?
yeah, I mean, I imagine the eyes being like two large white glowing orbs with like maybe blue rims around them or something like that, like light blue rims, and it has sort of like a wisp ghost like form.
Like, two Will o' the Wisps from Brave.
Yeah, kind of something along those lines.
Yeah.
um
As eyes instead.
yeah, so maybe they look something like that, and perhaps they're also extremely delicate, so like they're at their most vulnerable when they are outside of something. But they can also hide. They can morph into whatever's around them. They can maybe one of the way. Yeah. Why? I'm just thinking if they were being attacked, what's to stop them from say morphing into the sword that's striking them? Do they need like a moment to
Nothing,
morph?
technically.
What?
I think they do have to leave. I think they have to. There has to be a moment where they transition out and transition back in, and maybe there's a delay there. So that's really risky.
I think it also might require like focus, because this way, like
Possibly.
if you were to say strike one in the back and they weren't ready for it, then they could die. But maybe if you were to like aim for their face and if they see it coming, then they can prepare for it and absorb themselves into the sword.
And then there's the whole aspect. I think they have to be touching it. So if this thing is swinging at you at full speed, maybe it has to be still. Like, maybe it can't be in motion as well. So if you have this sword that's swinging at you, then you can't morph into it because it's not stable
I like
enough
that
in the
idea.
environment for you to morph into it.
I like that. I think that's good. Like, it has to be a stable item. And so if you were to say like try and capture something like this, you would have it, you would probably trap it in like something that's constantly moving, like a jar that is hooked up to a machine.
A merry-go-round jar.
Yeah, a merry-go-round jar. So that they can't escape.
Because then they can't morph into the jar, because the jar is technically always moving.
Yeah.
And that's another thing that will prevent them from doing like really large buildings, because there's movement involved in that. So like, sure, like a house, you might be able to catch it when it's not moving, but like a skyscraper on a windy day, I tell you, it shakes up there. It's scary. It's in motion, so you can't take the whole skyscraper. I'll prevent them from doing things like taking moving cars or causing a lot of destruction in that sense. But if they catch a stable car, then they can go off.
What if the size of whatever they could absorb was determined by their skill level? So like a more experienced wisp could absorb something like an entire building, maybe even an entire castle, whereas an inexperienced wisp could only absorb a rolling pin, something small.
And they have to like level up and learn how
Yes.
to do bigger objects and get a better understanding of themselves and expanding slowly.
Yes. Now I'm just imagining like the Queen of the Wisps doing the thing that Queen Whatever Wanabe does, where she just absorbs into the building as like a declaration of her might and her power. And she would probably be like just the oldest and wisest amongst all of them.
Is wisdom associated with it?
Well, I would say it's associated with age largely. Because if she's the oldest and she has the most experience, she's also probably going to be the wisest. She's just survived longer than all of the other wisps around her, and so they made her the queen. Now, age does not necessarily translate into wisdom, but in many instances it does. And I think that if
Yeah,
someone
but I think
lives,
that's purely based off of society. So some societies that value like knowledge and wisdom, then sure, the older people are going to be wiser. But in like a warrior-based society, then things like rage and aggression, then that's what's the older people will embody more. Or in a society that values art, then there's like a more artistic side, or so on and so on. So it's very much whatever society the wisps value is what's going to mark the maturity of these guys.
yeah, I think that in a society where you need experience to control larger items, I think that they would probably value uh just one's ability to control it, one's knowledge, and knowledge does not always come with wisdom, but it often does.
Would it be more like a self awareness then that they value? So the idea that you have an understanding of focus would be something that they value. So it's none of that's really associated with wisdom. So like you could have a queen who's very who makes decisions that aren't smart, but you could tell that she's very focused and she's very in control and she's very sure of herself. And that's all things that, seem appealing to a ruler, but then can also lead very quickly into like having a dictator. That's how dictators are formed. They're not exactly wise, but they're very sure of themselves, they're very confident, they're very stable, they know themselves well, and they can pretend they're wise because of it.
Yeah, I'd say that that's actually a really interesting setup for a really interesting character now. Like we've already got ourselves a really interesting story premise. I don't think that the queen would of the wisps would necessarily be the main character, but maybe like a more like a side character. Maybe almost like a villain who thinks she is the good guy, and the heroes have to stop. Like I think this is already working out to be a really interesting setup for a character.
Because another element of these type of people is the fact that they believe they're wise. Like and she has the evidence that she's a really wise person or a wisp because she can absorb these buildings because she's so old, because she's so experienced and in control. But it also means that she's probably one that you can talk to and have like those more, or get personal with, or have those more one-on-one engagements versus just a villain you outright just kill and attack on sight, which I personally prefer those villains where there's engagements of different types than just punch them. I think
Yeah.
they're more interesting for stories.
I imagine once again it would be a lot like the Lego Movie 2, where they go in and they talk to the queen before anything else, before ever like trying to stop her. They
You're
talk.
really spoiling this movie.
Yeah, have you seen the movie?
You are. I have, and you're really spoiling this movie for those who
I
haven't.
am spoiling it quite a bit, but if you haven't seen the movie, it's your own fault.
I think I'm going to stop what you're going to say next, because you haven't spoiled it badly. All you've done is say that this is a character. But what you were about to say next will spoil the ending of the movie, and let's not do that.
Yeah, I'll avoid that. Yeah, it's a really good movie. Go watch it. It's not as good as the first one, but it's still a good movie. So these wisps, where would they live? What would their homes look like? Because when you can morph
Do they have
into
communities?
anything around you, I would imagine they would be using these tools or this ability as maybe a way to construct stuff. Like imagine if you wanted to build a house and you needed a log. Well, what if you could possess the log and then just move yourself over to in place to be built and then just leave the log and then secure it in place?
And then if you needed to cut the log or do whatever, you just possess those tools and do it yourself without fear of hurting yourself.
I imagine it'd be slightly uncomfortable because you can chip metal or like slowly whittle down metal. I think it would be something. It feels probably similar to scratching your nails on a chalkboard and what that would do to your nails. I imagine that's sort of what that feeling would look like, or whether that would feel like. Yeah.
I think they'd be willing to do it, though. especially because we're viewing these as just like two little eyes. I don't think they have a choice. I don't think they could. I think they have to physically possess something in order to use it. I don't think they can just like pick up an object. They have to possess the object.
Yeah.
And in that note, I'm assuming can they make objects fly and float, or is that going too far?
Um, I feel like maybe they should be able to, maybe to a point. Maybe it's like the bigger the item is, the harder it is for them to make it fly and float. Because I think that they can fly around and float on default because they're these ghost-like creatures.
Agreed.
But
Yeah.
when it comes to lifting an object like a log, that might require some semblance of their own strength. And so levitating like a bottle would not be hard. Levitating a fallen tree, that might be a challenge.
On another note, is there a thing with like, so if they can possess a tree, that means they can possess organics. Is this a thing which they can do where they can, if an animal happens to be still, can they possess it?
Well, maybe.
Or a human?
Because I'm thinking the wisps are essentially, I guess you could say, souls. And maybe when it comes to like another living creature, or another creature already has a soul, and so they can't take its place. Or maybe if they were to try, maybe it would kill whoever they're possessing. Because it would have to oust the
I'd
original
never
soul
sleep again
to be able to take its place.
But so you're saying we live in a world where people have to be like constantly moving for fear of getting possessed? Like if they're sleeping, they're like sleeping on beds that like rock them or something, just so they're always moving. Is that what we're created here?
I mean, this is
would animals just naturally evolve to like move and sleep?
This is assuming we go with what I am, what I just proposed, and they can in fact oust other souls. We haven't confirmed this. Do we want to go this route?
Well, I like a good dark story, so I'm just humoring it. But but trees are still an interesting element in like plant life because technically they're living.
Yeah, but they don't have souls.
So but one could also debate if a dog has a soul.
One could debate if a dog has a soul, but for the sake of this world building, we'll say that they do because they are creatures and not plants.
Okay, so we're saying creatures have souls, plants do not.
Yes.
All right. But would it kill a tree so it wouldn't kill the tree for them to possess it?
No.
All right. Unless obviously they like root it out of the system and then kill it that way.
Now, something I thought about is them possessing items that can flex. So, for example, a tree is not that flexible. It can flex to some degree, but eventually it'll snap and that'll hurt them. But what if they were to possess something like, say, a puddle, and then they just turn into a water creature? Like, they would just have to use their strength to keep the water up. But is this something that that they could do and turn into essentially a nearly unkillable creature? Would it because of the nervous system thing, would they cause pain if they were to accidentally drop some of the water? Or are they just holding it there in this instance because it's a liquid and not solid?
I think we've established some interesting elements that I also can like differentiate the wisps from each other, is that there's certain things that they have to train themselves to be better at, and I think floating things and being able to like levitate them is one. So like strength of will to lift things, the strength of will of size of like being able to control a large area is another thing that they have to focus on. And in that idea, I don't know how. I guess since they are created that nervous system, I do think the water would be attached to itself. Like they'd have to have all the water pieces together, which means if someone sliced through and managed to separate the water from the creature, it would hurt a lot.
Yeah, so if the water is separated from them, it would hurt. But if it were to change its shape, like if somebody were to try and stab them,
I think it'd be fine.
Meaning
and it would just yeah. So if you slice them and like the water's still, and they have enough control to keep the water like together as the slice goes through, then they'd be fine. But maybe a lesser experienced one who loses it, that would hurt them a lot.
Yeah, so
like,
maybe
that'd be a lot of
a
pain.
way to fight that would actually take some, instead of a sword, would take something like a shield and then slice through the water with the shield because it's wide and you could actually cut through and separate them.
Or a shovel, like a scoop. Just try to scoop water out.
Yeah, that would work too. But what if they can control like the water tension as well? And because if they can control,
like make it solid.
yeah, make the water tension so solid and strong that it would stop something like a shield or a shovel or whatever from getting through. And this could also allow them to pick up items and stuff.
And it would also allow them to move things like buildings easier. Because imagine you try to move a building, everything crumbles. But if you have the ability to strengthen that connection and with like the nerves that they produce and stuff, then they could move this building without any pieces falling off. Like you can keep this giant thing in pristine condition if the wisp is experienced enough to do so, which I think is the direction that I would want to go.
Yeah. And I think that when it comes to something like, say, controlling water, I feel like controlling water, there's so much to it that you would have to focus on. Holding your shape, increasing the water tension, making sure nothing's falling apart. If someone's attacking you, you've got to make sure that you're constantly reconnecting the water. Like, there's so much going on.
I don't think it's something they do. I think it'd be a good practice. Like, I think having, like, young wisps learn with water is a very good practice for them because it exercises so many elements that they need to work on. But I don't think it's, like, a tool they use in, like, day-to-day life very much, unless they have to move water for that reason.
I think that maybe it would be a more specialized thing. Like wisps might learn to do it to a point. But it would be something like controlling a small puddle, and that's about it. But then there's others that might be more involved in something like, say, the military, where they want to learn to control it to its absolute fullest potential so that it can be weaponized. Because fighting a smaller one is not that big a deal. You hit it with a shield, it's dead. Or it's at least in enough pain that it's going to leave the water, and then you can kill it. Hitting it, but if it's bigger and it's more experienced, and it's like a full human-sized thing, that's a lot harder to fight, but you can still beat it. But if it's the size of a building or a tree or whatever, that is a lot harder to take down. But if they are but if the wisp
is... It's also a lot harder to control.
Yeah, it's harder to control. But if the wisp is experienced enough and it has centuries of training, it could do that. But in which case, I would think that a way that you might fight that is with catapults and launching maybe flaming boulders at them.
I think there's lots of ways to... I don't think these wisps are terribly overpowered, which is good. I don't think they should be. I think they're very beatable.
Yeah, I'd say they're extremely powerful, but they're also extremely vulnerable.
Also, we never confirmed, can they possess people, and if they do, does that person die?
I mean, I don't know, because you could argue that a person is always moving, like, because they've got their constant beating heart, they're constantly breathing, they're...
in which case, you can always argue, like, a building or something's always moving, too. And I think that's another thing that the wisps can train themselves on, is to be able to take control of more movable things. Like, like a really experienced wisp can possess that sword as it's slicing through them.
Yeah, I agree. Like, I was thinking the exact same thing. So a way to help fight back against wisps would be make sure you're constantly moving so they can't possess you. But if you're going against an experienced enough wisp, all it would need to do at that point is just fly into you. Doesn't matter how skilled you are at dodging, it's going to get you. And then it just has to fly out and you're dead.
And then there's also... And the things they could do to children, like, because they're even smaller, it's just... We have more child murder, and maybe we should... we've had that in, like, the past 4 episodes, so maybe they can't do that. I vote that if it has... quote-unquote a soul, they can't possess it. And we can argue about things like jellyfish in another time.
Alright. Yeah, okay, we could go with if it has a soul, if it's a living creature, it cannot possess it. But if it's just an item,
But plants are still free game.
yeah, plants are still fair game.
And also, I think they can possess a dead body.
I guess so. I don't see why not.
Because there's no soul in it anymore.
But I don't know if they would want to, because
oh, I don't know why they'd want to either, except maybe to freak people out.
A corpse is rotting, it's delicate, it could fall apart, and they might be in pain when they possess it.
Well, okay, but here... Well, no, because, again, they can solidify things, so I don't think that's going to be, like, a well-trained one. Think about, like, for, like... I don't know, it could be... What if a wisp just wants to be someone's pet? Like, they possess... Like, someone's dog dies, but the person doesn't know it, but a wisp comes in and sees this freshly dead dog that still looks... that doesn't look dead. Could that wisp potentially just possess the dog, keep the body fresh just because of the way that it works, and just become a person's pet for the rest of its life?
I honestly don't see why that wouldn't work, because if it was something like, say, it died from blunt force trauma, but the body is, for the most part, is like still in perfect condition, then yeah, it could just keep that heart beating, keep the blood flowing, keep the digestive system. If it can keep everything running, then yes, the wisp could absolutely possess that dog and live as a dog.
Yeah, and just befriend a human as the dog. And then the human finds out one day that its dog was actually a wisp for who knows how long. And then they have to process that.
That would be so sad and so painful, though.
I
think what might be better might make me cry less is if the dog got they got killed and then the wisp possessed it and then the dog was adopted. Because then you got less problems with like the person saying the dog doesn't have the same personality as it did before. Doesn't feel like the same dog, and then it would be very sad. I mean, if you want to write a sad story, then yeah, you could go with that. Or you could go that route. But I more like the idea of like the wisp possessing the dog after it's died and then becoming the pet.
Yeah. And just finding a new human and decide. I could see. I don't know. I don't know if a wisp would ever want to do that, but I think it's an interesting like short story.
Yeah, it all depends on like what types of personalities and stuff you give to the wisps. What types? Well, then again, I was gonna say like there's a good chance that like they're too intelligent or whatever for that. They don't want to be. Like they see themselves more on the level of humans or above humans, so they would never want to be pets. And then I'm like, then again, there are humans out there who identify as dogs. They become pets for people. They live their lives as pets. So that's
exactly. Yeah. I think a wisp might do it.
Yeah, I think that there's surely at least some wisp out there that would do it.
I know, this feels like one of like Disney's little shorts that they do before, or Pixar shorts, I should say that they do before like a Pixar movie. Like where they're kind of like weird and sad sometimes, and they make you feel things that you're not sure of. I think that's what this feels like to me, is like a story of this wisp possessing this dog and then befriending him, and then people being confused about why this dog has lived like so long. Like, this dog is 40 years old. I don't understand it. And it's still going strong.
Yeah. This does seem a lot like a Pixar short, although I feel like it...
Yeah, and then you have like this older person that this dog's befriended is about to pass away, and the dog lays on the bed, and then the wisp comes out to guide the human soul home.
Okay, that's a nice ending. Actually, it's sad, but like, at the same time, it's really pretty.
You know, it's like it's sad, but it's like it's true. Yeah.
I actually, I was unsure about it as like a Pixar short, but now that you said that, I'm like, actually no. I'm actually more okay with this now. Look,
in one of their Pixar shirts, the mother eats their dumpling child, okay?
I was thinking about that.
So I think mine is sweeter and nicer, and I now want to see it animated.
I was horrified by that and so shocked, where she didn't want him to leave, and so she ate him.
No, I agree. I wasn't prepared for that. But like I said, this is at least like it's a sweet and it's a sad, and I'm gonna send it to Alex and see if he'll animate it for me. Because I want to see this animated. I think it'd be a really sweet little animation.
It probably would. And it does seem like a lot like something Pixar would do. Assuming Pixar
If
was still
Pixar ever
good.
finds this,
Pixar's going downhill. They're really struggling with some of their latest movies, and the ones coming are like Toy Story 5 and Inside Out 2. So
gosh, I don't need this.
I mean, there's also Elemental, which a lot of people are just saying looks very generic.
Yeah, I didn't see anything special from what I'm like, why is Pixar making a rom-com?
Yeah.
That's not what they do.
If they can do something really interesting with it, something unique, then sure. But it is just a story of two lovers who can't be together.
Yeah.
But if they can do something extra special with it, then sure. It just doesn't feel like there's anything extra special being done there.
I don't know.
Anyway,
I'm
that is
willing
not
to give
what
it a
this
shot.
podcast is about.
No.
Maybe we'll review Elemental when it comes out. I don't know.
I'll be up for it. I'll watch Elemental with you.
All right. Anyway, I think that we're actually done. We're only about 30 minutes in, but I'd say that we've done it. We've created the world.
Well, we create the creature. This is another creature-based one.
Yeah, this is a
I don't
creature-based
think we have
one.
much of like a world.
We haven't created like a full
it's a cool
world,
creature.
but we created a good chunk of the world.
And we've created a short now that if anyone has any animation skills, please animate it for me because I want to see it and I don't have the skills to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I would still probably feel a little uncomfortable about the idea of it possessing a dead dog the entire time.
We don't have to dwell on that.
Like, as long as you can, like, just sort of glance over it, like, make me sort of forget about it, make the rest so sweet and endearing that I am not thinking about that, then I'd probably be more okay with it.
See, my idea. Okay, so I'm gonna break down this thing for you. So my whole idea, you have like a really young child, like 3 or 4, who gets this dog, pet dog, and then an accident occurs while the kid's still a child and the dog dies, and maybe even the child sees it happen and is like crying over this dead dog, but it's like this is like a 3 or 4 year child. It's not gonna remember this in the future, and then this wisp sees this happen and takes pity on this child and comes down and like reanimates the dog, and the dog's okay and the kid's like all happy again and trauma's gone, and then you just see them going through life together and you have this really intelligent like best friend dog because it is this other being that's a bit more humanoid than dog like, going through the life of the child, and the dog does things and like maybe saves the child life a few times or comforts the child when it's sad as they grow through life, and is there when they have like a family, and then it interacts with the kids as well, and it comforts them in his old age. This dog's suddenly trained to do like house chores and stuff that a dog should not be. Some dogs can, but like you wouldn't expect this old dog to do, and it's winning awards for being the oldest dog alive, and they have this great life together. And then you have the ending scene where the person passes away, and as he passes away, the spirit leaves the dog, and the two souls connect, and then they go off together, and then it's the end.
I think that works a little bit more. I just don't. I feel like the original dog, should just be in there very briefly, so that we don't get too attached to the original dog.
No, original dog comes in, like, licks the child. Traumatic experience, spirits in. Like, the actual dog gets, like, 2 seconds of screen time.
Yes. I think that could work.
Yeah, but the rest of it only works because it's a very traumatic and sad beginning. And then the rest you go, oh, really sweet. And then at the end you're, like, crying because they're both dead and they're going off, and you're like,
But at first you need to make us attached to the wisp. Like, make the wisp really, really cute. However he's animated, he's got to look really, really adorable.
That's true. You're going to make a really cute wisp.
Make us love the wisp, so that even if he possesses the dead dog, all moral questions and stuff, like, no one's acknowledging because we just think the wisp is so cute and endearing. He's got to do something lovable.
That's why you have like the crying child in front of this dead dog, is because when the wisp sees that and it comes down and he like tries to comfort the child in wisp form but can't really do anything, and then has this realization of what's making this child sad and makes a decision and then reanimates the dog, and then like the dog starts like licking the child's face and you have that child's laughter and love, and then they go off and live their lives together. See, you have that. That's why I think the 3 or 4-year-old child has to watch the dog die in order for the audience to be okay with the wisp reanimating the dog.
Maybe either that or the dog could die and the child doesn't see it, and as the child's coming around the corner to see it, then the wisp is like, oh no, this is going to be traumatizing for the child, and then reanimates.
No, I think the child needs to see it. I think the grief of the child is going to be the thing that moves the wisp, and also moves the audience to being okay that the wisp does this.
Okay. It still feels like it would be a real challenge not to make this feel wrong.
I think you need the shock in the beginning and stuff. But keep in mind, the thing about this short, and that's going to be interesting about it, is that the first dog dying is going to be like a shock, but it's not going to make people sad. It's the journey, and by the end you're crying when both the person and dog pass away and go off together. Like, that's the sad part to you, and that makes you question things. And that's the whole point of shorts like this, is to make you question your morals and your beliefs and your values after you watch them.
Yes. Question things like, when your son goes off to marry someone, should you eat him?
Oh my gosh. The answer is no. But it's a symbolism thing, and I'm not completely sure what like a dog being reanimated symbolizes. Like that, I don't know like what the symbolism there is, or like maybe it's the idea that someone, like, you can lose someone in your life. I mean, my idea of like what this could symbolize, and the fact that I came to it after the idea of the story, just shows how dumb people trying to symbolize these things can actually be. But like, it could even represent like the loss of a parent, like a child who loses their parents early, but then someone else comes and steps into that parent role, and that being just as meaningful and powerful as the story goes along. But it's just shown through like a child and a reanimated dog.
Yeah, I think it would work.
I think so too. I want to see the short. Pixar, hire me to write your shorts. I could do them. I can't animate them, but I can come up with the ideas.
All right, so I think that's good for today. We're gonna call it quits now.
Yeah. I hope you enjoyed us world building a short.
Yeah, that's not the.
That's a bit of a turn.
That was not what I expected when we started doing this episode, but yeah, we world built a Pixar short. And it's more original than anything Pixar's making nowadays.
And on that controversial note, we're gonna say goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.